Ladies and gentlemen, Noiturne versus This Is Jimmy. This is Jimmy fighting for that aspirant rank. Noiturne probably also doing that, but mostly just learning the game and having fun. We've got some matches on Apollo to take a look at, and Noiturne is our black Zerg in the bottom right, while This Is Jimmy is our purple Terran in the top left. Now, Apollo is a map by BiddyBee. It's been recently added to Class 1 on our Melee map pool for 1v1. I have not actually gone through and taken a look at any tiling updates that could be done, any BiddyBee tiles that I must hunt down and find. I gotta be honest, guys, I actually don't have a lot of time between everything that I already do for Cosmonarchy. I used to be able to set aside time for that, but, you know, I'm making these videos, guest starring on other channels, like a proper YouTube celebrity, doing those collabs, etc. I'm working on the map, working on content for the map. We just had map crap come to a close while we wait for the voting to come in. Losing is what I do for a living. That's a good one, Jimmy. Made me laugh. And it looks like, yeah, I mean, I just feel like we've got a lot of cool stuff, right? I'm recording this on the day that I released Cellbound, a Protoss scenario. So you guys may have seen the YouTube post about that or the coffee post, but if you donate $12 or more a month on coffee, you get access to those kinds of scenarios in advance. Actually, if you donate a certain amount of money, you actually get to request a scenario full stock. So that's, I mean, it can be a scenario, it can be a melee map, something like that, but usually it ends up being like a melee map or some kind of arcade thing or whatever. So, yeah, just figured I would throw that out there as an idea. We have some cool things that we can do in Cosmonarchy that I'm just continuing to make happen. I actually added a couple of factional units earlier today. They're still not fully operational, but getting there. Making progress on adding some new infrastructure for Protoss. The Xenolith deployed recently. The Zobrielisk for Zerg was added as well to finish up the tech tree and move the Ultrav Cavern to Tier 2. We'll see how that one shakes things up later on in the game. And yeah, I guess speaking of Jimmy's first combat unit being a Savant, well, I'm actually working on an overhaul for that as well. So a lot of stuff still to come as we get closer and closer to making Cosmonarchy the best it's ever been, which is basically what I do every update. So yeah, figured I'd just blab about that as we see. I will point out, Jimmy had a very greedy opener. He went late Stockade into Covenant with no combat units and no scouting. So definitely needs to work on that because, you know, if this was like a faster aggression from Noiturne, or, you know, if he was up against a more experienced Zerg player, he would just outright lose the game. Like, Noiturne could go across the map right now and kill Jimmy, actually. He just doesn't know that because if he has played against Terrans, we know he's played against Peace-Sense, then, yeah, we're continuing our profile of those newer players or players that need a little bit more time in the oven, so to speak, before they can feel like they're big and strong. And yeah, Jimmy's idea is to scout with a Savant. I've not seen that. You know, if anybody follows like HLTV or like the Global Offensive Counter-Strike 2 space or whatever, yeah, this is an I aren't think that moment. And it's true. I aren't think that. The Savant just got absolutely destroyed. I don't know what he thought moving one unit across the map was going to do, but he does at least say big brain to Noiturne for the burrow trick, so I like burrow. Yeah, me too, Noiturne. Me too. I like Noiturne. Me too, Protogo. So I am interested in where Noiturne goes from here. He's been enjoying the one-base builds a lot. I feel like in this particular context, he should absolutely just drop another hatch. But he doesn't know what his opponent has yet. His opponent just scouted him with a very expensive Terran bio unit. Might actually be the most expensive bio unit if you're not counting the Shaman. I think it's the most singularly expensive unit you can move across the map. So losing that early on is pretty rough. Zethicors are scouting out over here just to see what's good, what's good, what's cooking. What do we got here exactly? Well, apparently we got a dead Zethicor, and really not that much here from Jimmy. So Noiturne is going to go ahead and put together some Hydras. He's got a lot of larvae, but not a whole lot of combat units, right? It looks like he is going to go ahead and drop a hatch by his natural, which is definitely welcome, but he's adding more larvae when he's already kind of quote-unquote floating larvae, insofar as if you have 3 larvae, you're not going to get a 4th. You know what I mean? So I do think that at this point it would be a good time to just throw in a bunch of Zeths. They're only 25 minerals a pair, and maybe just take some map control. That, or just make a bunch of Drollots. Jimmy, meanwhile, has 1,500 minerals. I don't know what the heck he's thinking or doing. He's got a lot of miners on the minerals. He's completely neglected his ridge, and he has not expanded. So definitely some things that he needs to work on as time goes on. But that's partially why you send me your replays, so I can point out easy things to fix. You also send me replays when you want me to make epic videos. So I'm sure we'll get an epic part of this. There's the sieve. Was waiting for that. Capping his ridge, adding some more combat units here. I do like the idea of, well, I don't like the idea of queuing all those units, but, you know, that's what Jimmy does. I do like the idea of adding some Harakans, some clerics into the mix, but at this point you also need to drop extra stockades with all those extra minerals that he's got. See a big, well, medium worker transfer sending over there to colonize that natural base and getting a bunch of Hydras. The army is looking pretty good for Noiturne. I don't know if he would have actually been able to just crack this with what he currently has, but if he just kind of sits on this position, takes a third base, goes ski-backed, grabs himself some Bactylisks, he can pretty much just clean house here for what Jimmy has and what Jimmy is making. Definitely wants those Ovoleths, and I believe, yeah, he's got one out here, but I thought maybe there was another one in production at some point. Looks like maybe I was seeing things. Another Kagrant being dropped down. Noiturne does like to keep his larva count up, and it looks like he's going to continue adding them. At this point, really, though, he does need more workers than anything, you know what I mean? He's lacking in that department, and so his economy is not going to be able to keep up with his larva. Probably a small thing that Noiturne can adjust and optimize. I know he's always playing more, and he's always learning and stuff. I think that treasury is misplaced. It's also odd that it's a treasury. So now that Jimmy's down the ramp, this could be a little bit of a different engagement, depending on what Noiturne does. Some of these are on Power Siphon, some of these must be on Entropy Gauntlets. Looks like, you know, this is another thing that'll be much easier to deal with and find out when yeah, they're all on Entropy. So they'll all penetrate the Hydras, but he switches over to Power Siphon. Okay, he wants to see if he can just kind of stand here and fight. Hydras are going to be able to focus down individual targets pretty well, though. There's a big amount of Quasilisks mixed in here. A couple of the Entropy Gauntlets Savants are on the way down as well. Yeah, it doesn't really look like Jimmy's going to be able to hold 2,000 minerals in the bank. That is pretty rough. Yeah, it looks to me like he needs to lock in here, and he might just end up getting overwhelmed. He has nothing coming in the tank. He's got vultures out the wazoo being queued. Hey, that Zethra that's been burrowed there that whole time could be added into the mix. What does Noiturne have behind this? More Hydras coming, lots of extra Kagrants waiting for their directive, some structures being canceled over here. Don't know what that was all about. And a couple of stimmed Mavericks are going to come out to try to focus down individual Hydras, which actually they can do, but not when they're in this count. So more units are still going to be required. And it doesn't look like to me like Jimmy is going to make it happen. He is struggling right now. Riding the struggle bus. GG has to be called. Okay, well, Noiturne will take that match. And that was looking pretty par for the course for games that I've seen featuring Jimmy. A lot of the times he queues a lot of units. He spends a lot of his time just kind of slowly making stuff out of a small number of production facilities, right? These are things that I think if Jimmy wants to run for that class 3, he's going to need to turn up a notch. So let's take a look at what he's got in game number 2. Our positions are swapped here, as Noiturne is our black Zerg in the top left. This is Jimmy will be down here in the bottom right as our Palatinate blue Terran. And like I said earlier, right? I'm not going to wax philosophical and be very happy and go lucky about Cosmonarchy and the progress I'm making and stuff. I am happy about that stuff, don't get me wrong. But I'm not going to spend all that time focusing on that. We're going to take a look at these players in the early game. As Jimmy says, looks like he's waiting to drop a Fulcrum. It is a bit of a pricey structure, so he's going to have to wait a moment. Or no. Okay, misclick. Okay. I don't know what he's doing, actually. This is already time where he could drop a Fulcrum. If that's exactly what he wanted, but it looks like maybe he's going to go for, I think they must have been setting latency or something. Maybe he's going Starpad Opener. I mean, he's got a lot of money in the bank. There we go. Okay, Fulcrum on the way. Still could have been faster. You know, as soon as you get that mineral and gas breakpoint, you want to be able to drop the structure you're opening with. It is your first structure after all. And it looks like Noiturne actually going for a pool start. That's kind of interesting. So his pool will be a bit earlier than it was in the previous game, by all accounts. Larvosk follow-up. Still harvesting Vespine, so most likely going to go for a second Larvosk on the 1 base. At this point, Jimmy could think about adding another production facility or getting off of gas to harvest more minerals if he's intending on expanding. As of right now, he's got 150 gas. What are you going to do with that gas? That's the question. It's a little bit too risky to go straight for like palladium into phalanx or whatever, so, you know, not really being able to spend down that Vespene is going to cost you. And that's one of the reasons why I think I prefer introducing players who want to play as Terran to Bio, because it's a bit more straightforward. You only need one resource for it, right? So he is adding one stockade to his repertoire here, which is nice. He's going Scrapyard with no unit, which is very dangerous. As a mech player, when you drop your Fulcrum and it's finished, you want to make a Vulture, at least one Vulture before you add an add-on, in case you are being all-in by the Zerg player, and also to get some very important map control and scouting. But instead he's going to go for those Blackjacks. He is a fan of that. And we'll see what he can do as a follow-up. If this ends up being a Vestry stockade, then he can get like Clerics and Shamans to keep his Blackjacks in tip-top shape. He still has a lot of extra Vespene. Again, could definitely pull those Masons off, get himself a couple of extra minerals. And we are going to see the double Larvosk into Hydrith Den, a very favored build. I would say it's not a standard build for Zerg, but it's a standard Noiturne build, if you understand the difference there. Let's see what Jimmy ends up doing. It is indeed a Vestry, so he's going to lock into a composition that he is somewhat familiar with. The problem is he cancels 2 out of these 4 Blackjacks. He can put down another Fulcrum and still have Blackjacks producing the whole time, right? And then he can add another Scrapyard, and then he can add another Fulcrum and another Scrapyard. And then suddenly he's making 3 Blackjacks every rotation instead of 1. That's really the major issue that I'm seeing in Jimmy's play. If he fixes this one thing, if you just don't queue the units and instead spend the money immediately on more production, on an expansion, you know, this is, when you think about how much money you have got locked up in these kinds of queues, especially like Shaman plus the 4 Blackjacks from earlier, he could have put down a Ministry and still had full uptime on his production structures. And that's to talk about, you know, you're expanding. He would have probably had it even earlier if he had taken these off of gas. Now he's getting Shamans, so he's going to need the Vespene, but admittedly, maybe not enough to queue up so many. So we've got anti-drop defense in here from Noiturne. I can throw some advice slash critique towards Noiturne here. He can definitely just afford to go for an expansion here instead of adding more static defense. He's down to 15, maybe 16 workers on the minerals, yeah. And he's going to go for all 3 tech structures with no expansion. At the same time, he's going to go for this anti-drop play, which is not bad, especially since he did suffer some losses to P-Sense in earlier just this week in the channel's history. Well, I guess not this week, technically. It was last week. Who cares? You guys know what I mean. But when you scout that it's a Blackjack opener with Shamans as well, I'm not sure he saw the presence of the Shamans, or maybe he didn't see any of the units at all, depends on his reaction time. You can be fairly sure that they're not going to be super heavy dropping. It's fine to get these kinds of defenses, but while your army is already at home, you don't need them as much, right? You can just use your army to respond. It's a much more important to get that extra, you know, static defense and positioning advantage, as well as the economy. Once again, we come back here, and Jimmy is still queuing up a ridiculous amount of units. Yeah, if I could say one thing, like, to help people psychologically almost, it would be to, like, associate a full queue of units with that's the same equivalent as, like, just wasting the money to begin with. Just, like, spending the money and then killing your own unit. That's basically, you start associating, every time you see a full queue, associate it with the Blackjack death sound, you know, or the Shaman death sound. That's associated with that. Then you know, it's like, oh, I'm killing my own units. I'm killing my chances of success by doing this. So yeah, Jimmy could definitely have had way more of a military force by now. Like, that's probably one of the major differences between him and other players, come to think of it. But hey, that's why we have those ranking systems to differentiate players. But I'm just saying, you know, I know Jimmy's been making I would say making some noise, talking about how what he really wants is to scale up the ranks and be eventually even class 2 or class 1. Well, to get there, to get out of class 4, he's going to need to, I would say, clean up those queues and come back. But at least I'm giving him some actionable feedback. You know, he's got a lot of Blackjacks. At this point, your Shaman count is not really helping you that much, right? Because there's only so much of a radius that they actually show. So they don't heal for a crazy amount once you get past a certain point. But hey, his Blackjacks will still be quite a mulching force, mulching effect. We're going to see some static defense be put down by Noiturne. I've talked a lot about how Jimmy could improve his accrual of military units. The problem is, I haven't really talked about his composition to begin with. Blackjack Shaman is powerful and can actually make Noiturne's life a living hell. So we're going to have to see, we're going to have to watch what Noiturne is able to do to deal with this, because I forgot to pressure you. What a remembrance. What a sudden, oh yeah. So yeah, these are kinds of things that, like, obviously there's a lot to remember in an RTS game, but if you want to be a high rank player or a mid rank player or anything like that, these are some of the things to watch out for. He's already picking off the Zoryus, good indication of how powerful that stuff is. The one lake might scare him off, but you can absolutely move forward, deploy one Shaman to detect, and then just kill the lake is. Now, Noiturne's doing a good job of covering it, and you can see, focusing down those healing tanks. Yep, that's definitely a good one. There's the deployments. Looks like they might not be in quite the proper range to lock onto that lake is just yet, but he's getting pretty close. If he sort of shuffles a couple of those Shamans forward a little bit, he might be in there a little bit closer. Already starting to float a decent amount of money. Could definitely be dropping more production or another ministry or something. He does expand with a treasury. I think you definitely want to expand with a ministry as your first structure. In this kind of situation, I guess it's not too terrible. And Noiturne is actually going to try to focus down the individual blackjacks here, but that is not always so easy when there are all those Shamans. Definitely needs some more. Oh, he's going for the Khaz'trith. Okay, so that's going to make attacking into this position pretty difficult. The lake, as it looks like, did end up sort of relocating. We got some more lake is on the way, at least one more for Noiturne. Definitely needs to cap that ridge and harvest from his own ridge. He's not harvesting from his Eskagant. Definitely a mistake there. So some of the Shamans are going to get picked apart here. That's two of them going down. Not so good for Jimmy. He deploys the other two, loses a third, and now it looks like his blackjacks are indeed going to be mulched by the Hydra count. That's pretty difficult stuff to get through. That being said, he's not focusing down the Shamans at the end, and they're showing their teeth. Very difficult there for Noiturne to push through when he's not able to focus fire those healers or focus fire any individual unit. He could have definitely taken out more blackjacks. It looked like it the first time he was doing a lot better with the focus fire there. But so far, not so good on that last attack. Still, he forces Jimmy back, gives himself a little bit of breathing room. A Palladium is on the way, an Atlas is on the way for Jimmy. He's going to go for that tier 2 and a couple of phalanxes. Definitely can be pretty significant there. I don't know. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, Noiturne's figured out, oh yeah, I can harvest from my Eskagant. So he's going to start banking his own gas a little bit here, but he's got a lot of minerals. He could definitely take a couple expands, add some more Hatcherosks. This is the time where you peel off of the Larvosks, and instead you go for the ever-important Hatch, just so that you can get that extra larva without giving up any Vespene for it. But Noiturne's going to think about what to make next. He's got a lot of money. A lot of money. And yeah, a couple of Zoryus never hurt nobody. Could get a bunch of Izira Could go for some Vorva if you upgrade your pool. But depends on what he wants to do here. Another Kagran finishes. These circuits are kind of in an area to deny drops on the mineral line, but behind it, not so much. Now his Eskagant is done. He can go ahead and saturate that. Stepping forward with his Hydrith army. I love that he's still adding the one lake is and sort of hand-holding it forward. That's very funny. We do have a star pad for ant seals, which I don't hate. Jimmy definitely going to have some detection there. He's really drained on Vespene, and he's not harvesting any Vespene from his natural. No gas from the geyser, no cap on the ridge, and no harvesting from there either. So he's got 3 workers on gas and ridge over here in the main. That's great. Could cap that, but definitely needs to get on harvesting from his natural. Big absence there. Plenty of queues still going on, but nothing in the stockade. Okay. Could definitely be adding some clerics. They are mineral only after all, and tier 2 now on the way for Noiturne. A good move there. As we see him taking a 3rd base. When you have a big bank, it's always a good idea to ask yourself, what is going to sort of get me ahead in this position? How can I spend this money? Because I've got a lot of it. How can I spend it wisely? And to some degree, it's like, how can I spend it at all? Looks like they had a pause there to BRB. Makes sense. Sometimes real life occurs. I mean, I'll never forget when Jimmy asked me to play a game. I asked him if he was ready. He said yes. We started, and immediately he said BRB. And didn't pause. I had to do the pausing for him. So I just find stuff like that. Just like, huh? What are you even doing? Why say R if no R? So Jimmy's going to go ahead and muscle up a bunch of those blackjacks. He's adding phalanx support. 1 mantle is coming online. That seems to be all his tier 2 is being cemented for just yet. 6 o'clock is being taken by him. We'll see what he wants to do with that. Yeah, the Iral Iris nearly complete here, and worker transfer preemptive for Noiturne. Nice timing on that. Definitely could be doing a little bit better on the worker production. His saturation's a lot of it actually missing from that natural, and he's about depleted in the main, so has to think about that. Jimmy looks like he could certainly muscle through this position and force Noiturne back. There's an unburrowed Lakizalisk that's like having a shuttle in Starcraft 1 Protoss full of the 2 Reavers and just leaving it there as the Terran moves out with Goliaths. You never want to do that. Gotta unload it preemptively. Not currently harvesting just yet. Here is Noiturne. Ultrav Cavern on the way, so he wants to use some of those new melee units that he gets access to at this tier. That's very exciting to see, but right now he's trying to engage onto this fight. And, the Shamans and the Antseals are shielding quite a bit. The Blackjacks were kind of wiggling during that instead of shooting, but as soon as they started firing back, you saw the Zerg could not handle that. They need some tankier dudes, or they need some longer range dudes. That one lake is not going to be long for this world. Unburrows and manages to get out of there. Credit to Noiturne for that, but he's going to get tapped out after. Rest of the Zerg force going to try their best to hold this bridge for the time being. Might have been able to secure the kill on that Goliath, but at this point, that's like clutching at straws. You don't really have that much left. Ultrav is done, but what's he going to make out of it? You actually have to make either the Oxal Cesians, I saw him making one, and so you can go into Ultra Cores, or he needs to make some Zoryus and morph them, and right now he's not really doing either. Bit of a struggle situation here for Noiturne, getting shellacked at the third base. Jimmy has his own third up, but it's not mining yet, so it's actually not so bad in terms of an economic defeat. Like, it's not yet actualized as an economic victory for Jimmy, but still, feels somewhat imposing to lose your third base in such a fashion. No additional reinforcements coming, extra Hatrosks coming. What do we got here? He's looking at what he can make out of the Oxal Cesian. We need to see the Ultra Cores queued up right about now, but it's not happening. 1,000 gas in the tank as well. Kind of inverse problem from before, and he's got some unfortunate rallies kind of moving out all over the place. If he could get some Teths out, maybe he could hold this army because he could out-sustain them to some degree. 1 Ultra Core, 2 Ultra Cores coming. I get that makes sense, yeah. I would love, absolutely love to see some of the Zobrilisks, even though I don't quite like their model, so looking at them is sometimes painful, but getting some of that new unit implemented and watching it, that's always nice. Emergency Rilla Cores, we love to see those. You can make those directly from the Hatrosk now. I don't know. I think Noiturne's about to have to tap out. Jimmy has put together a very strong army. He's even got Cataphracts coming as the Rilla Cores die before they can reach their targets. Getting mulched. Khaz'Trith is over. And it looks like Noiturne is going to collapse as soon as his Ultra Cores hatch back at home. Sure, they're good units, but I don't think they can hold up against all of this wanton aggression. They kind of mass up for a moment, and Noiturne considers what he's got to do, making a bunch of Hydras. Maybe if the Hydras were all out, they could do something, but look at that. The Spraith not able to finish off the Antseals. The Droll that's almost trying to, buy time for the Hydras to hatch. Jimmy forcing his way up the ramp. This is his moment of glory. Definitely a lot that Jimmy can work on, but it looks like he went 1-for-1 with Noiturne, and, that's what matters. The Ultra Cores show themselves. Ah, shit, he says. But it's okay. It's okay, Jimmy. There's no way they can hold off against all of your Blackjacks. Muscling through, and GG has to be called there. And we got a little bit of a nice little shot at the Ultrav Cavern, that's always cool. This is now at Tier 2, so that'll probably be in our thumbnail. But, yeah, I gotta say, even though Jimmy was talking a big game, he's like, yes, now I beat Noiturne, so I can be Class 3, right? I think Jimmy has a lot to work on before I can comfortably move him up. I know he doesn't want to hear it, but right now it seems like Class 4 is where he belongs. I hope he takes it as motivation to improve. I hope he continues to have fun with the game. There's always more things happening with Cosmonarchy development. Tier 2 Cloak Tower coming for Terrans at some point soon. We got all sorts of cool things like that Savant revision and exciting new factional additions. There's always going to be things that people can enjoy in Cosmonarchy, and I hope Jimmy continues to be one. But for Noiturne, also, well played in that first game. Definitely some more stuff that needs to be done for him to iron out his play, and he could definitely look at Krankendow experiences and stuff. I think what we'll do is our next video will be a higher level match just to refresh the palate a little bit, and we'll try and maybe talk about some of the things that those players are doing. Hopefully I can demystify it a bit so that people know what to focus on, because admittedly, in those early games, I am sometimes waxing philosophical instead of talking about those decision makings, and if you are screwing up real bad in the early stages of the game, it kind of makes it difficult to make something happen in the later stages of the game, or even survive into the mid-game versus some of our better players. So let's see if we can turn that ship around for those lower level players. In the meanwhile, subscribe if you're not already. We got more Cosmonarchy videos coming every day. And join our Discord server if you like. We're fast approaching 750 on our member count, and soon 1,000 after that. It will be a grand time for the first 1,000 Cosmonarchs, and I hope that you are among them. GG!